told him Mark has only got 30 minutes. He can't hear us unless we
Okay.
questions.
Good.
He said, he goes, I can.
Okay, good evening. We will open the Victortown workshop for the proposed change in the sewer connection fees. And joining us is Mr. Mark Terrian from this great state of Colorado. And with him, we have a few individuals, Steve Metzger and Wes Petty from Lamella Associates, and Keith Meaner. Of course, Mr. Nankin, thank you, as always. Okay, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to meet with you tonight and talk about the sewer connection fees. And I'm always glad to hear that Wes is in the room, and I was particularly glad to hear that Steve's also in the room because given his position in history with the town as well as being a town resident, if I misspeak when I try and describe the sanitary sewer system and all of the moving pieces there, he can jump in and correct me. So, and maybe I should start with that. So I think Wes has provided, or I maybe it was printed in your offices there, but I did put together a summary sheet that I intend to go through, but even myself, I had to go back and kind of refresh my memory. There's a lot of moving pieces here. So let's just, at the outset, and I'm probably describing things that most of you already know, but so the Victor system is a collection system. So the wastewater that's collected in the Victor system ultimately goes to either the Farmington or the Village wastewater treatment plants. And so in terms of people paying and revenues and fees and rents and all the rest of that, people in Victor typically will pay either Farmington or Village or the Village sewer rents to reflect their usage and dependence on their respective wastewater treatment plants. And also because those discharges from Victor before they get to those two wastewater treatment plants go through a portion of their own collection system, and so that's included in the sewer rents, and as well as the work they do to operate and maintain the Victor system. Farmington and the Village of Victor both have what they call connection fees, partly to reflect the consumption of some of the capacity at their wastewater treatment plants, and also I think to offset the physical cost of making a connection. When we did a master plan back in, I think it was 2020 or 2021, we had only recently or about the same time set up the connection fees as they are now. And at that time what was happening and what continues to happen in the absence of the connection fee for the town of Victor is that the collection system is now part of and managed by our consolidated district, which encompasses many earlier, older, preceding individual districts. They were consolidated and grouped together. And so there's an annual charge or an annual assessment that special district assesses all of the parcels that are within the boundaries of the district on an annual basis. And it's a complicated formula, but a good formula probably, because it's not an ad valorem as you're used to with typical property taxes. It tries to estimate what the actual benefit is to the respective parcels being charged or assessed. And to do that, it takes the target amount to be raised, which is determined by what all of the capital costs are in a given year. So those would be principal and interest payments on bonds used to finance previous projects that are still have not been retired completely. It would also include the cost for any smaller capital projects done in that year that were not financed. So there's an amount that the town calculates or estimates that they will need for that year, and so they start with that number. Most recently, it's been I think the most recent figure was almost $800,000. And so to try and reflect the benefit to the parcels that are being assessed, that amount, that target amount, is broken up into thirds because it's going to be supported ultimately by 3 different pools that all of the parcels within the district boundaries will participate in. And their share within each one of those pools is calculated differently because the benefit itself is kind of a multifaceted quantity. So I won't go into the details. I'll just say that one of the pools calculates each participating parcel, and that would be all the parcels in the district, share in that pool based on what their water consumption was, which is an estimate, a rough estimate, but a reliable estimate of how much they've discharged to the system, since we don't have meters on the collection system. The second pool is assessed according to acreage. So the size of the parcel, there's a table, how many acres get this many points, twice as many acres get more points, add up all the points, divide that by the amount that you're trying to raise, and then that determines a rate that's multiplied times a parcel's individual points to determine what their share is. In both of these instances, the commercial properties are calculated differently. So for the water, the commercial properties for the same amount of water consumption have a rate that's twice as high. In the instance of acreage, the tables are just different, and they ultimately charge a commercial property the same size more than a residential property that size would be charged. And then the third pool is calculated, or the assessments are determined based on the property use as determined by the assessor's records. So commercial would be more than a residential parcel. A multi-residential parcel would be more than a single-family residential parcel. Vacant parcels still get charged a little bit, but less than the other parcels. So what that means is everybody in the district is paying a little bit different rate, and we'll get to that in a minute. So what I started to talk about was that these assessments that I've described really just, and it's not worth probably diminishing, it's important. It's the way by which all of the parcels or their owners who are participants and own this property within the district support these capital projects. But I think the important distinction to make here is that's not the cost of actually using the system throughout the year. It doesn't pay for chemicals. It doesn't pay for men and trucks out repairing things. It doesn't pay for utilities to run the pump stations, et cetera. The assessment in the special district that the town of Victor has been collecting is just for these capital projects. And another way, I guess, of describing it would be, it's to support the infrastructure. It's the collection system itself, which in Victor is substantial. Multiple pump stations, force mains, partly because of the topography, partly because of the way in which the system kind of developed incrementally following the development patterns. Anyways, it's a big undertaking. And so that's what these assessments that I just described that result in charges to all properties within the district, that's what they go to support. And that was how they were configured without any additional charges when we started these connection fees. I think it was in 2020 or maybe 2021. And so what we created a connection fee at that time. And the reason for that was that the connection system in the town of Victor has done a good job over the years maintaining what we call excess capacity. And so I'll just do a sidebar and quickly explain what excess capacity is, because you're going to have to hear me say that word probably 100 more times before I finally settle down. And if anybody has any questions while we go through this, please stop me, and we can deal with those. But just to let you know, this is just a little glimpse into hydraulics. So when we talk about capacity in a collection system, the collection system is sized generally based on the average flow rate. That's a number. And then on top of that, there's an increment added to account for the fact that that's an average, which means at times there's going to be a peak flow that's going to exceed that. So the numbers increase to account for the peak flow. And then there's a contingency, just to be on the safe side and trying to anticipate really extraordinary events. There's also a contingency reserve flow rate that's added on top of that. So that's basically the design capacity, those three components, average, peak, and then the contingency. When we're talking about excess capacity, we're talking about something beyond that. So those three components are what would be required for a given main serving a given number of people, that kind of thing. But the system has excess capacity in it beyond that. And that's been supported by those same assessments. And it's important because the presence of excess capacity determines whether or not new connections can be made to the system and where they can be made and how, what they can discharge, how robust those connections can be, or how robust the developments that are using them can be. And that's really what this whole connection fee, that's really the topic that this whole connection fee that was developed some years ago and that we're updating tonight tries to address. The fact that, and if we don't take anything else away from this tonight, I think the core point is the system has and maintains excess capacity. It's a capital asset. It's part of the infrastructure. It makes it possible for people who are not connected to come in and connect. And yet when you look at how that's been supported over the years, it has disproportionately been supported more heavily by the properties or parcels in the district that have been connected all along. And a parcel coming in for a new connection, by definition, has not been connected. And that in itself has reduced the amount that they have been assessed over the years according to that three-part formula that I described. The first component I talked about was water consumption, and they don't have any, they're not assessed that hydraulic flow part of the formula. And so although they will have been assessed something, they will not have been assessed the same amount as a property that's been in since the beginning and has been connected and developed the whole time. In a similar way, a property that has not only not been connected, has been in the district, but not been connected, and so is coming in now for a new connection, and also was undeveloped, but presumably developed now or planning to be developed if they're looking for a sewer connection. That parcel will have been assessed something over the period of time, but much less because it doesn't even get charged. It gets charged a very small amount in that third pool that's based on property use. So for those three scenarios, and there's actually a fourth scenario. So you get the one scenario where a property's been connected and been developed for the entirety of the interval we're looking at since the consolidated district was established. Then we have parcels that have been developed but were not connected and are looking for a new connection. They will have paid something, but they will not have paid what that first parcel I talked about would have. And then there's a third category, the ones that were not even developed, and so we'll have paid something but even less. And then if we start talking about extensions, where we're, and sometimes those could be small extensions, but a lot of the times they're extensions that are being proposed as part of a development. In those instances, because the district has no authority to tax beyond its boundaries or assess, those parcels beyond the district, they might be immediately adjacent, who are maybe in certain instances proposing to make a connection, will have paid nothing. And so when we talk about that excess capacity, the notes, the handout that I handed out, spend some time going through or presenting it. And we did a lot of study about this when we first did this and thinking, some deep thinking actually, about what was fair. These, we'll call them units of excess capacity that get taken off the table when you make a new connection. They have a value. And that value, indirectly, I guess, it's really owned by the district, but the people who have supported it are the owners of the parcels that are in the district. And as I just described, they will have paid, if you look back to when the district started, you will find that they will have paid different amounts. And yet that unit of capacity, it's a capital asset. It's not the kind of thing that depreciates over time from utilization. It's almost like an option, you know, that capacity sitting there in your presence in the district gives you the ability, because there is excess capacity, the right and ability to connect at some point. That has a real value, and it's like a capital asset that doesn't depreciate. We're not talking about using it or the chemicals, as I said before, or the repair of it. We're just talking about the fact that that infrastructure is there and it's robust enough to enable you to connect, and you as an owner of property in the district have not supported the development and maintenance of that excess capacity that you're now going to utilize to the same degree as other properties in the district that have been connected, some developed and some not. So the mission or the goal of these connection fees was an effort to try and improve that situation so that it was more equitable and more fair. And so we did that, and I'll go through the numbers in a minute, and I'll kind of, the table that we use that now is the output from that can be confusing. It even took me a while when I looked at it a month or so ago to try and remember why is that number there? But I figured it out eventually. So I'm going to go through, we're going to build that up layer by layer. But in the grand scheme of things, the attempt is to institute a one-time connection charge for properties coming in with a new connection. And the hope and the goal or intent was to, once they have paid that one-time charge, that they will be at that point in time close to being on the same footing with respect to their support of the system. That's the capital part of the system, the actual infrastructure, as somebody who has owned a parcel and been connected and developed since the district started. And it's an estimate, of course. It's not going to be perfect because there was no sense going through and trying to estimate, 1,000 different parcels and have a table that was, like a book. That wouldn't have been very useful. So that's really, I think that's the gist of it. I've left anything out. Does anybody have any questions now before we start looking through the figures?
Mark, I have no questions.
Okay. So I guess I'm looking at the handout. I have it up on my screen here. And I'm just panning down through here. I highlighted stuff that I didn't want to forget to mention, but I think I've probably gone over most of it. Maybe a good thing to do would be, if you could go to the second page, that's the one with the first table. So there's a series of tables here. So if you ask the question, on average, if you were to look at the residential parcels in the district that have been there and connected and using the system and paying these assessments every year for the past 16 years, beginning in 2010, and this goes through 2025 because it goes by tax roll year. So the 2026 figures aren't out yet. So we've used the figures we're talking about tonight go through 2020, the 2025 tax roll year. You can see there all of those residential parcels. Well, actually, so the heading for this table is at the top, of the first column. There's an estimate of contributions over 16 years by a comparable parcel within the district that's been connected and developed. And so we're really talking about just one kind of parcel as we go down the column, except that in one instance, they're residential, and in another instance, they're commercial. So any residential parcel that's been connected the whole time and has been developed will have, on average, cumulatively, over the past 16 years, paid that $1,739. And you can see that that estimated amount is much higher for the commercial parcels. A commercial parcel in the same situation, developed, connected from the beginning 16 years ago, would have paid $5,000. So that's, when I said they've paid or supported the creation and maintenance of that excess capacity, that's what I'm talking about. That's the amount that they have contributed to support the infrastructure comprising the town of Victor collection system that we're going to see on the next page. Others may not have matched. So if there are no questions with that, we can go to the next page, which really starts building up the same table with additional information. So we just looked at that first column, the parcels that were connected and developed and have been in there from the beginning, what they paid. Now, if we ask the question, so now we're just talking about in row A and row D, parcels that were in the district and developed, but were unconnected. So they paid a little less because, as I said, I don't think they were, their contribution did not include anything for water consumption because they were not discharging anything, and there was, so it just doesn't. So you can see how much less it was over the 16 years. Cumulatively for the residential parcel, $1,150 roughly, and for a commercial parcel, just under $4,000. If there's no questions with that, we can go on to the next page, which adds another. Now we're dropping down and saying, okay, what about those parcels that were both unconnected and undeveloped, but in the district? Well, they paid less because their property, the third pool calculated based on their property use indicated that they were vacant or undeveloped, and so they were actually assessed less too, and you can see how much less they were assessed in that second column. The $889 for a residential parcel and the $2,400 for a commercial parcel. And because I'm going to go to page 5 now. So because we do sometimes deal with extensions, and so we may have people coming in saying, I'm not in the district, I'm not connected obviously, but I would like to be. And I know it requires an extension, and so I'm proposing, me and some of my neighbors maybe, or maybe it's a commercial development somewhere or a residential development. We would like the town board to approve extending the district so that we're within it, and then we can make connections. So in those instances, and they're in rows C and F, if you ask the question, how much will they have paid since 2010, the answer is nothing. And the goal should be the same because there's no difference in the value of that increment or unit of excess capacity that they're now going to consume and benefit from and take off the table. I mean, they're depleting this excess capacity. It's not a bad thing, but it does have an impact on the district, and the district, it kind of encumbers the district to eventually begin replacing some of that, because unless we really feel that the development has stopped or there's not going to be any future need for additional connections. So now we have what the parcels who have been in the whole time and connected, what they have paid, and then what comparable, maybe not completely comparable, but what a residential parcel that has been in and has not been connected but has been developed, one that has not been connected but has been in the district and has not been developed, and then one that wasn't in the district at all, what they would have paid over the 16 years. And I guess I don't think we can produce a drum roll on short notice, but I'm going to skip this next page with all the writing for now. I think we pretty much covered that. We can go back to it if there's questions. But the last page, I guess it's the last page, page 7 with the table, all it does is add the arithmetic in that third column. So it just evaluates the difference. what's 1,700 in that first row and $39 less 1,154. So the difference between somebody that's been connected and developed the whole time and somebody who has been developed but not connected, what they have paid is that amount. And so this is actually the connection fee schedule. We require them with this schedule to pay a one-time connection charge of $585, and taking into account that a lot of these are averages, so it's not going to be a 100% precise number. That's a pretty honest and fair attempt at by way of requiring them to pay that one-time connection fee of having them and everybody else in the district who is connected on the same footing relative to how much financial support they have contributed or borne for the creation and maintenance of all this excess capacity. And so you can run right down through there and see what the amounts are, including, and of course, in those instances where we're talking about an extension, because they've never paid anything, the connection fee is just what a parcel, the maximum amount that a parcel would have paid over the years. And then there are two footnotes because these are all done based on a single unit. So when we talk about a residential parcel, we're talking about a single family. And the notes down there explain that if there's more, if we're talking about a townhome or something like that, and there's 10 units, it's going to be 10 times that amount. And the same thing goes with the commercial parcels. If we're talking about a commercial parcel that has only one commercial use on it, that's one thing. If it's a mall type, retail center that has 10 different businesses there, it's going to be 10 times the amount. So I hope that was helpful. There's a lot going on. There's probably more we could talk about. I guess there is one more thing for me to say, and that is the first schedule that we did, I think ran through, now I'm forgetting, Wes, but it ran through maybe 2021. And so we progressively realized that when you do these calculations and when you determine how much this one-time connection fee should be, it's continually changing. Every year, there's another year of catch-up added to it, right? So if I come in, if we just left the schedule as a fixed entity and did not modify it, and my neighbor came in this year and paid a certain amount based on whichever classification he was in, and I was in the same classification, but I didn't come in for 3 years, and then 3 years from now, I came in and asked to get a connection, I should not be paying the same amount he did, because in that 3 years, he's paid more, right? He's now, for the past 3 years, been assessed as a connected, fully developed parcel, and so he's paid at the higher end, not the lower end. And so really, this is a living document that should be updated periodically. I think we just talked kind of conceptually in the office there one day, whether, 2 years, it's kind of cumbersome, but it should be updated periodically, and maybe 2 years is frequent enough. The numbers aren't that huge, but to just allow it to sit there and be 5 or 10 years old is really doing a disservice to the people who came in earlier, not at the beginning, but earlier, and the people who come in at the very tail end of that period of time are probably, I'm not going to say they're getting away with something, but there's definitely an advantage there in terms of how much support you are required to contribute.
Well, and it's not like our sewer district's getting any smaller, or it certainly is. Our sewer district will be larger in 3 years than it is right now. I guarantee you that.
Yeah, and Steve can vouch for this. I mean, he and I talked a lot when I was working on the master plan, and it was really fun for me, that not being, an area that I spend a lot of time in. I mean, the number of pump stations and the topography and the force mains and, how do we get this from there to there and what's the most economical way? And it's pretty complicated. So, and not inexpensive. So.
what are there, like 35 pump stations west in the Farmington Sewer District and 32 are in Victor?
I'll let Keith answer that. You got the number of pump stations?
We own 30 total, and 27 of them go to Farmington, and 3
Right.
of them go to the village.
Right.
Questions for Mark?
Yeah.
Any questions for Mark? No?
One thing I'll say, Mark, is I really like this consolidation on your worksheets. I think it makes it really simple to understand. My head was spinning when we met a few weeks ago, but I think you cleaned it up, and it's a lot easier to understand, and it makes a lot of sense. So I appreciate your efforts.
Yeah, it was confusing to me at first when I pulled it out, and I'm the one originally who kind of put it together. So then I started thinking, well, if it's tough for me, what are other people going through? So I'm glad you think it helps them.
Councilwoman Olgra, any questions?
No questions, but that was fantastic. Thank you. That was probably the most clear and concise I've ever heard sewer being moved, put into terms. So, thank you. I think probably prior to being on the board, I probably knew, I'd say, most anybody else coming onto the board about sewer and water, et cetera, but that was great. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. It's been a great opportunity in my career to work with Victor. It's always been a joy.
Mark, I'm going to ask if Keith has a question. Our
Yeah.
town attorney's here, and 2 of your colleagues from your firm are here as well. So are there any questions? Keith?
No, but thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate it. All your work on this.
Frank?
My pleasure.
Steve and Wes? All good. They both said you look good up there on the big Zoom screen there. Mark,
They always say that.
thank you very much.
Yeah, my
Continue
pleasure.
to enjoy the state of Colorado, and again, thank you very much.
All right. Good to see and hear you all.
Yep.
Thank you.